Let's begin by starting with a little bit of a review from the other day. If you were with me, this will be really, really quick, and if you weren't with me, it's still going to be really, really quick, but I just want to make sure everybody's aware of what we talked about the other day when we were in class, and that was, of course, the Unravel strategy. This is basically the strategy you'll remember for when we read something in class where you're going to take a quiz or a test later. Like the story Seventh Grade itself is going to be that way. And you'll remember that there were steps that went into that. U stood for underlining the title, which you actually don't have to do online, usually. Then I had you predict what the story seventh grade would be about. Then I told you that you should run through and number the paragraphs, but I actually have already given you the story with numbered paragraphs. That will be helpful. I told you you can read the questions in advance, and all the questions for the quiz on 7th grade are on Google Classroom under the materials. So when you actually take the quizzes, if you haven't done it already, it's there. Then I said that normally you would venture through, which means read the passage and maybe do those codes like stars and underlines. But a lot of times online, you can only do that in small group maybe, but we can't always do it. But the last two you can. You can eliminate the incorrect answers and answer the correct choices for the questions, okay? So that is how an unravel works. And that is not today's lesson, though. That was the lesson from the other day. And I just wanted to do a quick review, real quick. Okay, let's actually look, though, at what I do have for you today. That is called Racer. Now, Racer is another system for doing something different. And we are going to do a lot of these this school year. Racer is a middle school level strategy. It's how we answer short answer questions when they are at the end of a story. So sometimes they ask you questions at the end, and instead of multiple choice, you have to do a written response. Now, look at this right away. You can see the elephant in the room. Oh, come on. Why? 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 So, why do we need this? Sometimes you need to answer in a full paragraph, and here's the key. They ask you to cite information from what you read. Now, a few years ago, I showed this to my students, and a girl raised her hand, very smart student actually. She said, "You spelled cite wrong. You spelled it C-I-T-E, and it's not spelled that way." Well, it actually is, and let's look at why it is spelled that way. Actually, I'll start on the bottom this time. There are three words that are homophones. They sound the same, that are pronounced cite. One is sight, S-I-G-H-T. He has sight and he can see, or she can see. Cite, S-I-T-E, is like a website. And the one that we're going to use is right up here. C-I-T-E, to give examples and information from what you have read. I'll give you a sample sentence. Cite examples from the story in your evidence. Now that may seem confusing at first. That's why we've got a picture of Mr. Franz with question marks. I'm lost. But it's going to be really clear to you soon because I'm going to show you an example. Let's keep going here for now, though. So a lot of times questions will say, cite evidence from the story. And we must learn to do it, and we must do it every time correctly, and Racer will help you. Now, here is what Racer... Now, ignore the complicated crying, Mr. Franz. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not that complicated. But kids at first, they see it, and they go, wow, I see R-A-C-E-R. We just did Unravel the other day. It's a lot to remember. It's not that bad. When you're asked a question from a story, I'll sometimes say, do a Racer paragraph. That means this. R stands for restating the question in a complete sentence. A stands for answering the question or answering all parts of the question. Now, all of my students can do R. They restate the question. All of my students answer the question. But a lot of students stop there. And if you stop there, you won't receive full credit anymore. C stands for cite the evidence from the text to prove your answer is correct. Wait till you see my example and you'll understand. Cite evidence from there. So you give an answer, then you got to give evidence or prove something from the story that shows that you're right. Then E, you need to explain how your evidence proves your point, proves your answer. Then, very easily, the second R is probably the easiest one. Repeat your answer in different words. Let me show you an example question from the story 7th grade. Now, pay attention. This is not the question you have to answer, because if I give you the same question and then I show you how to answer it, I think students are going to copy my answer because they want to get it right. So here's the question I came up with. This will make sense if you read the story, and it is now Thursday, and if you have not read this story, you have a lot of work to do because you got to read it and do 2 assignments. But I'm going to read it to you and hope you read it and then talk about it. The question was, is Mr. Bueller, the French teacher, is Mr. Bueller a good person? Cite evidence in your answer. That means don't just say yes, don't just say no, don't just say he's kind of good and bad. You got to tell us from the story how you know that. Now listen to me. You cannot fake your way through a racer paragraph. You could take the quiz and get a bad grade and never read the story, and I don't know why you would do that, but you could. Your racer paragraph will be almost blank because you can't prove anything if you haven't read it. Watch my answer. So, is Mr. Bueller a good person? Cite your evidence. Now, what I did is I wrote R-A-C-E-R down the side of my screen here. I'll show you that maybe if you want, you can do the same. And then for each one, there's a sentence. Let's start with restating the question. We can tell if Mr. Bueller is a good person from the story 7th grade. So I restated the question there. Let me do A. Answer the question. I believe Mr. Bueller is a really good person. Now, like I said, a lot of kids stop there, but that's not good enough. Let's cite evidence. C. My evidence is. You may use the phrase, my evidence is, all school year when you get a question like this. What is my evidence, by the way? My evidence is that in the story, Mr. Bueller did not embarrass Victor by pointing out that he did not speak French. When you read it, if you didn't, Victor pretends to speak French, and it's really embarrassing because the teacher knows he doesn't, and he could have called him out and embarrassed him in front of the whole room. The teacher did not do that, and that means that he's a good guy. Now look, down here I have to explain that, though. E, how do I explain that this evidence means Mr. Bueller is good? This proves my answer. I'm going to zoom. You may use the phrase, this proves my answer. Because embarrassing Victor would have been really mean, and it would have hurt Victor's feelings. Last one is the easiest one. Restate my answer. Again, I think the story shows Mr. Bueller is a good person. Now watch. If I take those and put those 5 sentences together, I get this paragraph. I'll read it to you once. It's the same thing, just without the letters in there. We can tell that Mr. Bueller is a good person from the story 7th grade. I believe that Mr. Bueller is a really good person, and my evidence is that in the story he didn't embarrass Victor by pointing out that he did not speak French. So this proves my answer because embarrassing Victor would have been really mean and hurt Victor's feelings. Again, I think the story shows Mr. Bueller is a good person. This paragraph, or even if you write it like this with the letters, would earn you 100% for 6th grade writing on a question like this. It would pass the M-step test for 6th grade, which we got to do like in April. It's good, It will pass you in 6th grade for this type of question, and it is a lot better. Now, the two phrases to remember are, my evidence is, and this proves my answer because, I guess, or this proves my answer because, and then you explain it. What's your question that you have to answer? Now, maybe you tried this. Couple kids, maybe a few kids, I don't remember how many kids, wrote me yesterday and they said that they saw the assignment but they couldn't do it. And I said, come to class today. So that makes sense, right? Because maybe you were, I had some students yesterday that already learned this. Your topic says this. People say honesty is the best policy. Like, being honest is good. Do you think Victor showed honesty or demonstrated that, showed that in the story? Why or why not? Here's the magic phrase. Cite evidence from the text or the story. You must write a race or paragraph. Now, your assignment actually looks like this. I helped you in a couple ways. 1, in the upper left corner, let me do a quick zoom again. I put the racer letters in sent explanation, there. Restate, answer, cite or give evidence. E is explain your evidence, and R is repeat. I put it in the corner so that you would not have to have it memorized. So you don't panic and have to memorize or flip back to the presentation over and over again to try to remember what it is. On the right, I just put the question. It's the exact question I just told you. Honesty is the best policy. Do you think Victor showed that in the story? Your answer will go down in this area where you have blank area to do your work. Okay? Now, I'm going to help you in a couple ways. 1, Mr. Franz, can I write RACER on my screen, on my document? Can I write that? That'll help me keep track. I'm going to write R, then I'm going to restate, then I'm going to write A, and I'm going to answer, and I'm going to go down the list. Yes, you can. This is where we're going eventually, is we need to be able to do it without putting the letters in, because we don't want to put a bunch of letters on a paper sometimes. But for now, I want you to show me RACER. Now, if you're really, really, really good and you think you can do it without, that's fine. I already looked at the students who turned it in. I didn't look at all of them yet, but I think most of the students wrote RACER, racer, down the side of their page, here, because they wanted to get it right, basically, so they wanted to make sure they were doing it correctly. Okay? If you do that, it might take you to a second page down here, so you'll see that it takes up kind of a lot of room, but that's absolutely okay. All right? So this is the question. What do you have to do to be able to get it done, though? Well, I'll tell you what. Let me go real quick here, actually, to Google Classroom and show you what you need to do now. Sorry. I should have had this open, but I didn't have it open here. Absolutely right now, if you did not read the story 7th grade, you must. You cannot fake your way through a racer paragraph. It's impossible. It's obvious if you did. I've read it many, many times. So if you try to tell me something that isn't in the story when you cite your evidence, I'll know immediately that you didn't read it. So you got to read it. You can read it using the text here if you didn't, and of course you can listen to the audio. I already discussed that though the other day. Do not forget to take the quiz on quizzes. I think I probably maybe already said this. If I didn't, I'm just going to repeat myself. The questions for that are down here. Hey, look, there's the racer lesson. If you really want to review my lesson, you can see it there. There's the Unravel one too. And here's where that racer paragraph is, on your assignment. So, it's right here. It's the top assignment. It is due tomorrow, but I would not, you can wait till tomorrow to do it. I'm not going to check it before then, but I would be very, very careful and not push everything off. I don't want you, if you haven't done any of the classwork this week, you come to class but you haven't done it, you really need to you need to get to work as soon as we dismiss class. You need to go do the classwork, okay? So, that's where we're at. That's the racer lesson, okay? You will, for a while, receive this, where I always put it on your page and say, do a racer paragraph, and you'll have this, cheat sheet. It's not really a cheat sheet, but it'll tell you what they are. And I'll review it with you. You will become an expert at doing eraser paragraphs. So that's kind of how that works, and I just wanted to go over it and make sure you understood.